All right, welcome to Freethinker Radio here on KPFT Houston. Glad to be here. Missing Johnny today. But having a good time. Sorry for the delay, Derek.
He's enjoying his Thanksgiving, but we're here today for another episode of Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We're getting settled in the studio, so we're going to throw some music your way and come back. Today we're going to be talking about the Syrian whistleblower. We're going to be talking about, if we have time, getting to Iran and Bolivia. We're going to talk about a whistleblower from the Border Patrol that just came out recently. I know Micah's got more to talk about. Of course, we'll take your phone calls. All that and more today on Freethinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We'll be right back.
Freethinker Radio, that was Amber I out of Austin, and we're here, Derek and Micah, happy to share the afternoon with you.
Yeah, we're happy to be here. We are doing our Black Friday episode, Micah. I don't know if you've been to the stores already, if you got up at 5 a.m.
No, don't go shopping.
You could go be a consumer. But for others who might not know, today is also known as, Opt Outside Day or Buy Nothing Day. So there's a lot of different things. It's also post-Thanksgiving. I had a small little Thanksgiving gathering, Micah, with my most immediate family. Interesting little tidbit for the vegans in the audience. It was the first time that my mother made an effort to cook a vegan Thanksgiving, because I found out my brother and stepdad have been vegan for the last month, and I am as well. So it's kind of cool. I didn't have to just bring my own thing and eat my own thing in the corner.
You got to share it with family that was already
Everybody
there.
got to eat it, and my mom was excited to learn about how to cook her favorite, casseroles in a vegan way. So that was cool. Real simple, small thing, but it was kind of what I preferred, actually. So I just did that, and don't plan to do any shopping this day, but I'm happy to be here and talking about uncensored news, and we're going to cover so much today. What did you do yesterday, Mike, or what do you got coming up this weekend?
Man, I know that they got the up at the 19th hole, Ganesh is hosting some sort of event there. It's going to be pretty interesting. Seems they have specials and stuff. Also, next weekend, the farmers market's not the weekend coming up, but the one after Heights Farmers Market's coming up. But I don't know, man. I enjoyed having my schedule all messed up by being off on a Thursday and thinking that was the weekend.
I've been feeling that way the whole
So when you
time,
said what
too.
I do on the weekend, I was like, ate food.
I kept thinking, I almost forgot about the show today because I thought yesterday was Friday and today was Saturday. But yeah. Anyways, happy to be here. We want to remind you guys that if you want to support the station and shows like Freethinker Radio, which, by the way, we've been broadcasting since the summer of 2011, coming up on 10 years, not too long. But we're gonna be here on KPFT with you for the next hour. We're also here on Mondays from 4 to 6 p.m. where we have 2 hours to take more calls, go much deeper with stories.
And we're going to teach Derek how to answer the phones today.
And I'll learn how to answer the phones today. But I want to remind you, if you want to support KPFT, visit kpft.org, and you can find out all you need to about how to get plugged in, how to support. And really, it's an investment because you're investing in shows like Freethinker Radio, like
where you're going to get
Think Wing
tickets.
Radio, or we got some tickets to give away. And if you have any things to suggest, whether that means stories we're missing out on, songs, call in at 713-526-5738. That's 526-5738.
For sure.
So tell us about these tickets, Micah. What do you got?
Oh, we have tickets for the sketchiest comedy show in Houston, and it's doing over at the Rec Room Theater. And if anybody's been listening the last couple of Fridays, we've had Jonathan on last Friday, and I think a few Fridays back, talking about this Houston-generated comedy scene and theatric scene that's centered around the Rec Room Theater. And it sounds exciting. And he wanted to go ahead and hook us up with some tickets. We were thinking about giving them out to whoever calls. Yeah, just call in 713-526-5738. And like Derek said, don't forget, support KPFT if you can. Any amount of contribution to keeping the power on and the mics working and hot is definitely appreciated. We're all volunteers here and not, I guess, prostitutes.
We're working because we care and because we care to be here. And Micah, just clarification. So are you calling that show the sketchiest comedy show, or is that what they actually call themselves?
It's called good one. It's actually called Houston's Sketchiest Comedy Show, and it's featured by Comedy Hub Houston and at the Rec Room Theater. These tickets, they have 2 showings tomorrow night, one at 7:30, one at 9:30, and it's basically I guess about an hour and a half. There's going to be music. There's going to be sketch comedy. There's going to be more. You can read all about it. We'll post the event up. It's on Freethinker Radio's Facebook page, which hopefully you've already liked so that you can communicate with us there and catch up with everything that we do share out, because we do post the majority of the articles, even articles we don't have time to get into. Here we're restricted to an hour, but on the other side of the weekend, on Monday, we'll be on the HD band for 2 hours where we can get into more detail, more conversation, have more guests, and take more calls. So we're happy to be here, and that's the show in the nutshell if you've just been listening in.
One more house cleaning thing before we get into the news is just to remind you that if you do want to catch up with the archives, maybe you heard a song, you want to hear it again later, you didn't catch a story or something like that, you can visit Freethinker Radio on SoundCloud, and you can also go to the Conscious Resistance on YouTube, and we post the archives from our Friday show and our Monday show. They can be found there in their entirety.
No doubt. It's amazing to see the audience in the archives. Often parallels are as larger than sometimes the live audience. And the conversation goes on there in the comments. Thanks to everyone who does share the ideas out and the timeless articles and the timely ones as well, because we're trying to reach people, and you're helping us a lot there. And
I think we should emphasize that the reason Micah and I got involved with this whole thing, not to get too long-winded on it, we don't got the time for that, but is because we want to reach people. Me and Micah connected in 2010, 2011, and started doing the show in 2011. And the whole goal is, can we get people to think? Can we get people to ask questions? Can we start a conversation? Can we get people who might not agree with each other to find common ground? Or can we find common ground with people who want us off the air? Things of that sort. And so that's why we're here. That's why we come here 2 times a week for 3 hours a week, because we want to use these airwaves and this opportunity and the gift that KPFT gives to the community to reach you. So thank you guys for being here with us today. So what's happening locally, Mike? I know there's
there's this TPC group explosion a couple of days back, and a lot of people have been, I was absorbed with taking it easy over the holiday and being thankful. Meanwhile, a lot of people, I guess, were dealing with travesty throughout the world. Thank goodness that we're here to talk about some of it, because it turns out there was an evacuation order Friday that was just lifted today. 50,000 people on the Gulf Coast. There was a massive fire that finally got under control now after this chemical plant was rocked by 2 major explosions just on Wednesday, right before Thanksgiving holiday. So.
Yeah, I saw that. So they ended. There was like an evacuation for 50,000 people and a breathing warning and all this stuff. Like, have they given any more details as far as if the air is safe to breathe now? Is what they're telling us.
Well, they say the explosions began early Wednesday morning and were so big that nearby homes captured the bright balls of fire on front porch security cameras. The blast shattered windows and ripped doors off hinges. 3 workers were injured, and when a second blast erupted 13 hours after the initial overnight explosion, evacuation orders covered a 4-mile radius around the plant. No, I don't think they've had much time to get into the measuring this. I'm trying to see and cut through, a lot of the verbiage here, but no, it doesn't say anything about our air quality. It says environmentalists were also quick to point out that the TPC group explosion occurred just a week after the administration scaled back chemical safety plant measures that had been prompted by a 2013 explosion at Texas fertilizer storage facility that killed 15 people. So, of course, the people don't want to let the environmentalists, at least this group that they're referring to, they don't want to let it be passed that, here was this explosion that more regulation could have done something to stop it. So,
gotcha. Well, we hope everybody out there who's dealing with that is doing okay, because, that's quite a difficult situation. And, I mean, we've seen, 2-3 fires in the Houston area this year alone from plants, chemical plants?
It's historic down here, especially south of town, Pasadena, Texas City. It's a serious thing we live with. And so, the condition of these chemical factories, these plants, refinement, etc., is pretty important. It's important for quality of life of not just, these workers that were injured, but also for, the whole community. So,
yeah, I do want to make one note for those who actually care to, because like the environmental activists or folks out there, including myself, who might see these things and think like, dang it, this is, we got to get off that kind of system that fossil fuels,
it's happening,
this and that. But to understand that, I think it is important to know what the products come from. And I don't know if the article you saw mentioned it, but I saw one earlier that said it was, I can't remember the exact name, but it was basically a product that is used to make synthetic rubbers and things of that sort. So if you're using synthetic rubbers and this story doesn't, sit well with you, then maybe you could try to reduce that. Or you could do, if you wanted to, real specific research and find out about this specific plant and who do they provide their chemicals to and where does that end up. I don't even know if there's a supply chain that you can track, but let's say you can. Then you find out, okay, those rubbers are going to company X, Y, and Z. I'm going to make sure I don't support them so that not only am I angry about that fire burning and, polluting people's air, but I'm not participating in it.
You're not feeding that fire.
Just the thought.
You're not acting. You mean act consistent with your ideas?
Yeah, something like that. It takes a little bit of time and effort. So, yeah, just throwing that out there. And hope everybody is doing well. It's been a difficult situation out there. Last week, I know we covered this already, but I just want to recap again that the officers and one of the neighbors involved in the Tuttle case, the Harding Street raid, were arrested by the FBI last week, in case you mentioned that important story. It's something that is going to be increasingly important in the coming weeks, I think, and months. And that trial, I would assume, Micah, that trial is going to take place here in Houston because it's a Houston case, and so the FBI arrested him here, but there should be a federal trial.
I saw a new article, and I'm trying to pull it up. I've got so many tabs, but I saw a new article that said the federals are not releasing him from custody.
Yeah, so I did see that, and so my point is, if this trial happens, we will be able to actively report on it. It's going to be here in Houston. I'll be going to the trial, every day if possible, and at the least on Friday and Monday, you're going to hear us give direct updates about what's going on. And in my experience covering trials in the past, there's so many details that get lost if you only follow the deadstream mainstream corporate media. Because
isn't that kind of the point?
Yeah, that's why we're doing what we're doing. And it's their point, I think, to serve their purposes. But I've been to a few trials where if I had only relied on what the AP reported that day or Reuters reported that day, I would have a 5-paragraph, report of, okay, this is what the judge said. This is the kind of basic outline. But when I was there in person, taking detailed notes throughout an 8-hour, 10-hour day of courtroom drama,
recording and listening to that.
There's so much context and important details that get lost. And in a case like this, you better believe that the police are going to try to keep any details that make them look bad, including if somebody up higher than these 2 officers were involved, either suppressed out of the court itself, or at the very least, tell their buddies in the media to be quiet about it.
What do you think? I wonder, what do you think could come from this? What can come from this?
From the officers being charged?
Yeah, other than them being held accountable for murder or whatever, you think anything can happen systemically from this?
it's difficult I feel like to see something systemic, like, okay, we have citizen review boards and things of that sort, but I feel like, okay, for example, on the no-knock raids thing, right, Acevedo pretty immediately said that he didn't say they weren't going to do no-knock raids. He just said they were going to add another
Didn't they try to
layer.
use the word end as you know it or something like that
we're
in the
gonna,
beginning of it, like
exactly.
day one?
They tried to pretend like they were backing off him, but really when you look at what they said now it's going to be a specific SWAT team and the officers are going to be pulled. They made some minor changes.
I think one thing with that was, and they said someone, like, he had to approve it, right? Didn't have to be approved. Isn't that also a way of saying, it wasn't my fault what happened before? I didn't have to approve it?
Well, and the thing is, now they're just adding an extra layer of bureaucracy. Like, he's like, okay, we're going to have a different judge now who has to approve this. And there's a specific SWAT team for the no-knock raids, and all those officers are going to be pulled from one unit instead of just random different units. So some
restructuring.
Some minor surface-level restructuring changes, but at the end of the day, it's not going to stop what led to that. And so you talk about
long-term
long-term
about
changes.
things like confidential informants and...
well, that's what I'm saying. How do we get to the point where, because the main thing is the officers lied.
Yeah.
And that confidential informants were made up. And as you said last week, confidential informants are it could be anybody saying anything, That to me is, like, when you talk about structural, systematic changes.
And anonymous tips.
That's what we need to get. Yeah, and how do you stop?
Confidential informants, anonymous tips.
I was thinking about this over the last week. Those who are just tuned in now, you're listening to Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. And over the last months, we've talked about these red flag laws and these mental health check laws. And, Micah, think about that in the context of what this neighbor did. This neighbor is accused of calling the cops and claiming that they had guns. There was a big push to take away people's guns, machine guns, drugs, and this is just like we've seen in Connecticut and Maryland, these other places that are passing the red flag laws or the mental health check laws, where your buddy, your neighbor, your ex-girlfriend, your friend, or say an angry, disgruntled neighbor calls the cops and says, oh, I think I'm worried about them, or lies and says you have weapons, guns, drugs, et cetera, or you're a harm to yourself, and you end up with a no-knock raid. Yeah. I mean, and you end up dead. That to me is kind of a bigger picture here of, how do we address those things? So I think that's an important question to ask, and we're going to throw that out to you, audience. We'll be taking your calls in just a few moments. How can we take the lessons of the Tuttle case, the Harding Street raid, that we're still trying to get to the bottom to, and how do we get to a place where we can't have neighbors lying on people like that?
Where there's enough check and balance on these actions that they can't just happen by what keeps being explained away as, like a loose cannon.
Yeah, exactly. It's just one bad cop, one loose cannon, or, I think it is important conversation to stop and have that. A lot of times we're just rushing through the news and letting you know the updates, but in many ways it's important for us to let's take a pause. Let's look at this. How did we get in this situation? Is there a way out of this situation, et cetera?
I do have a couple of things to say about that, because it turns out, you asked some questions earlier that prompt this, I believe. It turns out that U.S. Magistrate Judge Christina Bryan ordered former narcotics officer Gerald Goins to remain in federal custody just this week, earlier, right before Thanksgiving, and also denied bond. So it's a U.S. magistrate judge that's even deciding where he's going, it sounds like. The decision comes after 55-year-old pled not guilty. He's saying that. We'll see what happens, as you said. It says he'll felony murder charges in state court. So, it's a Texas-level thing. It may happen in Houston. I don't see why it wouldn't, but things do happen that are strange.
Yeah, there could be an effort to, honestly, and I've seen this in other cases where the police or, let's say, the attorneys...
Thinking they can't they're already...
Yeah, they could say, like, it's been reported too much in the local news and people, are angry at the cops. They've already made judgments, so we can't pull an impartial jury from there. We have to
it was so bad that before we even knew what was happening, we had to warn them not to talk about it.
We're not sure what's happening, but if you go out there and talk about it and talk bad about us, we got your number. Joe Gimaldi, HPD, Police Union.
Oh, good stuff.
All right. Well, I don't have much more local or Texas myself, but if you got any go for that, and the stories that I want to focus on today are a little bit more about national news, but I think that they're important because I guarantee you our listeners here, if they're paying attention to any of the other stations on the dial or the mainstream, they're not hearing these stories. And I know you got a few things you want to get into.
Well, let's that I did see, just to hit a headline, that there's Teacher of the Year under a charge now. It's that whole. Social contract, send your kids to school so we'll make them better, and then we end up beating them, molesting them, all these different things. But now we've got, I guess it's a Fort Worth area Teacher of the Year being charged with molesting a student twice in a classroom. So,
Teacher of the Year?
Yeah, just that's the last thing I have locally. Just in case you forgot that locally your government's getting up in your kids' lives every day. Every day they're going to school, they're teaching them what the system wants them to know. How often do you have conversations with your kids about this? And do you do stuff other than just support, what they're telling you to do from the system? Also, do you go to these things? What are they called? Open houses? And how effective do you think that is in knowing if your little babies now, what is it, indoctrinator is going to be a pedophile or not? That's a lot to go through. And like we've pointed out, it's not just the teachers. You've got all these different admins. We've had bus drivers. We've had the police at the schools. So yeah, okay. So it's an age-old thing, but it's also a serious thing, and it's a freedom thing, because this is your government. Many people's first interaction with government is going to school.
Yep, and it's also where they get the education about what they're supposed to think about the government. I was never educated in government schools. That the version of history we're about to share with you is being told from the position of the victors, by the way, just to give you a little context and understanding. It's just sort of told to you as, here's the one version of history. This is the only truth that exists.
Yeah.
Coming from your government school book. But I'm glad
the
that
state saved everything.
I'm glad that you continue to point out those things, Mike. I actually did find
I get tired of it, but I feel like the argument's so important.
Yeah, no, it is really important. And I think that the listeners understand the value of pointing out that we have people in positions of power, principals, teachers, etc., who, in this case, dealt with molestation. In some cases, it's physical abuse. In some cases, it might be mental, psychological abuse. It could be things of that nature.
Like the quiet rooms we've been talking about.
The quiet rooms. I mean, even just personal anecdote, when I was in 11th grade, I had a teacher who was obviously miserable at her job. Obviously didn't want to be there, and it kind of showed through her work. All the students even made a joke like, "God, this lady's miserable because she's miserable to us." And she told me, like, within the first week of my junior year in Algebra 2 or something, "You might as well give up. You're not going to be able to get this." And so I just laid my head down and went to sleep. And then, we played this game every day where she'd write me up and I'd leave the class. And it was just this sort of
that's what I think
games.
is important. All these little games, they're like alternate realities here up in the buildings that's going on. These kids are living this life like you were there. But everybody else just thinks, oh, well, they're just going to school to get taught their lessons, and they're not learning.
I don't think I ever even told my parents that. Like, hey, today I went to school, and one of my teachers told me to give up.
Yeah, yeah, and that was another thing in the quiet rooms studying that these kids begin to learn that they're bad kids, that they're bad
Horrible
people, or you get what I mean? That they are taught this in these environments. So I'd be highly critical of anything and any interactions of any of my loved ones with any sort of indoctrination system like that.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm going to share this one Texas story before we move on to bigger things. This is this is a pretty interesting one, I think, and definitely, again, would love some phone calls, some thoughts. 713-526-5738. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton joins effort to stop Fort Worth Hospital from removing 9-month-old girl from life support. And we've seen these kinds of cases before, Micah, with, again, the state wanting to kind of take control. The case centers around the Texas Advanced Directives Act, a controversial law that allows doctors to end treatment for patients when further care is deemed futile. So if they say it's futile, even if you got money, it doesn't matter. They want to take them off life support. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton stepped in Friday on a court battle over the medical future of a 9-month-old baby, arguing in a legal filing that the child's family should be allowed to keep their daughter on life support after doctors said she has little chance of ever having a viable life. Paxton's involvement in the case hinges around a controversial law that allows doctors, with approval from an ethics committee, to end treatment on patients who they feel have little chance of survival or when further treatment is likely to be futile. In these cases, the Texas Advances Directives Act gives the patient's family 10 days to find a hospital to transfer the patient to before doctors suspend care. Paxton, Texas Attorney General, says, quote, "One of the core principles provided by the U.S. Constitution is that no person should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This unconstitutional statute infringes on patients' right to life and does not allow patients and their families sufficient notice and the opportunity to be heard before physicians override the rights of their patients. Patients must be heard and justly represented when determining their own medical treatment, especially when the decision to end treatment could end their life." And it involves a prematurely born baby, Tinsley Lewis, born at Cook Children's Medical Center in Fort Worth, who has spent her entire life at the hospital and has undergone major surgeries to treat her severe heart defect, lung disease, and severe high blood pressure. She has been in life support since July. The hospital began talks in September with the Lewis family about transferring her to another hospital or ending care. Hospital staff has yet to find another hospital that will take her, with most agreeing that further treatment is futile and may extend or worsen the pain and suffering she may already be experiencing. Her family, however, has fought to keep her on life support and got a judge to sign a restraining order against the hospital, forcing it to continue treatment until at least December 10th, not too far away. So CNN reports that Tinsley's mother said, quote, "I thought they were going to pull the plug on my baby. I didn't think that she was going to still be here today, and that's what I'm grateful for. It was a big relief because I've been running around all week trying to get help until Sunday, and then finally I got what I've been praying for." Paxton has been a critic of this Texas Advanced Directives Act for years, and various lobbying groups have been fighting over it. Two major anti-abortion groups are often at odds over it. And the George W. Bush signed this into law in 1999. So on November 15th, the hospital issued a statement saying it would continue care in light of the restraining order, but reiterated its belief that further treatment likely would not help Tinsley. I mean, and it kind of sucks because how can you even confidently feel as a parent that those doctors now are going to treat your child like to the fullest extent that they can, if they're already kind of saying like, look, this is just delaying the inevitable, and maybe that's their medical opinion based on years of experience or education or whatever. But I mean, I do agree that we have a right to life, and as a parent, you're the guardian, especially of a 9-month-old child. There's no arguments about this child having the ability to think for themselves and make decisions for themselves. So the parent is the guardian in this position, and for the state to come in and just take that away, it seems pretty scary.
Yeah, that's serious.
I mean, I definitely don't. I think there's probably a lot of parents listening to our show who would be horrified to whether like this exact situation of, say, a child being born with a couple different diseases and not having a very good outlook on their life, on their health, or a child coming down with something, and then let's say your child has been perfectly healthy for 18, 19, 20 years. And they get some meningitis or something, right? And it gets extremely bad, extremely fast, and you're trying everything, but the doctors are like, you're just delaying the inevitable. And the parents are like, we're about to, put our house on mortgage to save our kid or do whatever we have to do. And they say no. And you have 10 days to move them, or I guess are they physically going to throw your kid out to the street? I don't know. But I don't think we should be giving the state that kind of power. And George Bush signed that into law. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, that doctors could just randomly do that. I get that maybe, it's weird. Nobody else can refuse service.
Yeah, isn't that it's interesting? Good point, right?
I got one quick thing that's going to take us back one step, and I'm really sorry about it, but Tuttles. Turns out that the FBI individual, the FBI Special Agent O'Neill Brown, testified that he found more evidence on Goins' official but unmarked Houston Police Department car. It turns out that Brown's testimony brought forward new revelations about the investigation into Goins' activities. He testified that Goins was involved in a sexual relationship with one of his confidential informants. The same confidential informant told investigators the drugs Goins said were purchased from the Harding Street came from a different address, and we spoke about that. But it turns out that investigators also discovered a stolen gun in Goins' unmarked HPD unit and various illegal drugs, including cocaine and ecstasy. It appears that Officer Goins, this HPD officer, member of the HPDs, had more illegal drugs and illegal guns in his car than the victims, that's the citizens, wow, the Tuttles had. Turns out the Tuttles, when you put, like in a video game, put the tally up, they had a small amount of marijuana and a small amount of cocaine. And that's if you believe nobody dumped that there. Also, so compared to what Goins had, he had cocaine, ecstasy, illegal guns, stolen guns.
In his cop car?
Yep, in his unmarked car. So I figured we'd get into that just for a moment. Goins, his partner, Stephen Bryant, and the neighbor, that anonymous tip, were all arrested on the federal warrants. And It does say this. This is from a strange source, but it's facts. It's ammoland.com. In the interest of justice, it appears Dennis Tuttle fought back against the armed home invaders who had shot and killed his dog in the living room with no warning. The home invaders were undercover narcotics police. 4 officers were wounded. One of them was Goins, and they say, well, he was shot in the neck, so that probably being in the hospital and shot in the neck probably stopped him from being able to do a more extensive cover-up. And it turns out that Dennis Tuttle's guns were all legal. So they had less drugs and...
So who are the real criminals?
Yeah, really...
The people that had, whether we think... I mean, obviously, I think mostly on this show we're for decriminalization, but currently these drugs are illegal, right? So they had illegal drugs. They had guns that, whether... We don't know if they were purchased legally or if they were under the name. And they broke into somebody's house and killed people.
Yeah, dressed like just people. One last little point here. It turns out that it's reported that Goins was involved in over 100 no-knock warrants in the 7 years previous to the Harding Street raid. His informants and the documents used to obtain the warrants swore guns had been seen in all of them.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those. I mean, just think about this. The Tuttles were likely killed without having any idea what the hell was going on. They probably thought they were being robbed by some masked men.
Yet... no guns were ever reported as being seized by Goins after the raids were over. How do you like that? Over 100 raids with claims of guns in them, but no guns recovered during these raids.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. We're going to stay on the story. We're going to take a quick music break. I know we got one call waiting. We're going to go to a song or two. You're listening to Freethinker Radio. If you want to hang on the line, please do, or you can call back in a few moments. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. I found this band recently, Micah. They are called Sincerely, and
I saw that up there.
I'm not sure I can't read the name of the song, but we're going to give it a play here. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Who was that we were listening to?
That was Sincerely from Detroit, Michigan. We'll probably play a little bit more of them in the future. I like them. They're instrumental, kind of just different. We got one call on the line. We got MOD with us. I do want to say to the caller who called before, we accidentally hung up on you. Please do call back. He wanted to comment on the hospital situation. But right now we got MOD. He said he's got some stats on no-knock raids and police militarization.
Hello.
Hello.
Well, yeah, I was looking at this article the ACLU published in 2014 called Excessive Militarization of American Policing Report. And wow, man, you ready? So this was released in 2014, 5 years ago, I guess, and it says 80% of SWAT deployments that are 80% of them are used to just basically issue search warrants instead of for things like hostage crisis or active shooting. 80% of the SWAT deployments in this nation are used just to issue warrants.
So that's the no-knock raid style.
That there, and that there are 2015, a different report, 20,000 no-knock raids a year.
Wow, that's a staggering number. Did you hear about the 100 that Gerald Goins was involved in? That over 100, every single one of them, guns were reported, but never were guns retrieved.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking of the scale of this, guys. I mean,
yeah. What was that number again? Sorry, I took us off track a little bit, but tell us that number again.
On which one?
The scale, when you're talking about the scale of the no-knock raids.
80%, you said?
80% of SWAT deployments are just to issue warrants.
And how many deployments were there? Or you got to another number after that? Like
I have 20,000 no-knock raids a year.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I want
to. Hang on. There's let me think. There right now, as of 2017, 500 law enforcement agencies have from doing these drills have received what's called mine-resistant ambush protected vehicles, MRAPs. So when they do these I guess drills, they get military equipment, and so.
Hey, all right. Sorry about that, MOD. Not sure what happened just then. Derek, what happened to all the phone lines? Wow. All right, well, we are here. Those numbers are staggering, and he's right about the militarization, getting heavy-duty military equipment into the municipalities. He was speaking about the mine-resistant vehicles they're getting.
MRAPs?
Yeah. And it's kind of, it does beg the question of, well, I guess pretty soon they'll have to have some mines out there to justify them, huh?
Yeah, apologize to MOD for accidentally cutting you off there, and then we have another caller coming on. But I do want to say what he's discussing is, and I think where he was headed, is the militarization of the police in general. And we're going to get into some more stories that will kind of talk about that, because the reality is that this has been going on through the federal 1033 program for a while, giving the cops the tools and the MRAP vehicles and all the fancy things, and they want to use them. So they're going to use them one way or the other. All right, we're going to go to our next caller. He wants to talk about the medical situation with the child on life support.
Okay. Caller, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. So you wanted to talk about the medical situation about children on life support and such?
Yeah, you guys bring out some good points about your child being on life support, not having control over it because of the government stepping in with their laws. On the other hand, there was that one lady, Marlise Moniz, that was on life support, and she was brain dead and pregnant, and they couldn't get her off life support. So it's really tough because, on one hand, you're a parent, and you think you have hope, and you want your child to try everything, right? But on the other hand, this man is married to his wife, which is brain dead and pregnant, and she's suffering, and she was decaying, and she couldn't get off life support because of the same law. So it's like a double-edged sword. I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that, but it's definitely a double-edged sword. It can help you and it can hinder you depending on the situation.
Yeah.
And I'll leave you guys with that. Now let's discuss it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your call, and we always appreciate everybody's call. And he made some good points there as far as it being, two sides to the story, right? And that maybe the law can help in certain instances or it can hinder in other cases. I think that, or just let me speak for myself, the point I was trying to get at before, and I think he understands this, just to reiterate, that I feel like it's a dangerous move to put the state in control of that. In the case of a woman who is, he said, pregnant, but also
pregnant and a brain dead.
So like in a vegetative state, and her body's suffering, maybe the baby's suffering, and you probably have a situation in that case. And if I remember correctly, the husband wanted to keep her alive, but the parents were trying to let her go. And there have been cases like that. I don't know. I mean, who has more quote unquote right over another person, the parents or their loved one?
And see, that is one of those sticky situations.
Either one of those are better than the state, though, I think.
Yeah. And that's, I guess the takeaway is it's probably better to come to some sort of agreement of all the parties there, then, is all we can say, right? In an analysis of that, right? Because, otherwise you got a law that's hurting and possibly helping here and hurting there. And it's kind of arbitrary, right? You see what I'm saying? As he said, it would help, in this example, it was hurting this pregnant woman and it was hurting these children that could perhaps get help elsewhere. But what I thought was interesting, since we've stepped back into that story, you said in that, not to go too deep into it, but that they had X amount of time, 10 days, I believe, to get their loved one to another hospital. So even though this involves a state law, it doesn't involve saying, okay, well, we've deemed this person not worth putting anything into, therefore you can never go anywhere and get it fixed.
Sure, they're just saying you got to get out of our hospital within 10 days. Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, think about, would another hospital be willing to take a patient like that who has already had certain doctors saying, hey, we think it's futile, it's not like, I mean, I imagine that might make it somewhat difficult for a parent to kind of take their child or whatever the situation is elsewhere if they've already got that mark from one doctor, one hospital saying, oh yeah, we're not doing anything here.
I got to see that part of the Hippocratic Oath where it talks about you just give up at a point.
If the patient is non-responsive, just give up and walk away, or give them 10 days. But we do appreciate the call. If anybody else has any other thoughts on any of the stories we're going to cover, we're down to the last 15 minutes. Guys, it goes so fast. We're here Monday from 3 to 4 for 1 hour. We're here Fridays from 3 to 4 for 1 hour. And then Mondays, after your weekend, catch up with us on 4 to 6 p.m. And that is on the HD2 dial or at kpft.org/listen if you want to hear us get more in-depth with these topics. And if you have something else to add, 713-526-5738. Micah, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump right
into it. Sorry about that, MOD.
Yeah, apologies for the short calls. So this one is important. I don't even think we mentioned it last week. I know we mentioned it on Monday, but it deserves an FM audience, to say the least. So in April 7th, 2018, there was reports of an alleged chemical attack in Douma, Syria. And within days, we were told that this was another chemical attack coming from President Bashar al-Assad and his Syrian air forces. We were told that the locals found some cylinders that had to drop from the sky, and since the quote-unquote rebels in the area don't have an air force, well, then there's no way that they could have dropped these canisters from the sky. So obviously it had to be the Syrian Air Force. Then you had the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, which is an international organization that studies and goes into situations where chemical weapons are alleged to have been used. But unfortunately, it seems like the OPCW, like many international bodies, often become tools and puppets for the Western nations, for the NATO nations, and to kind of back up what they want. So we were within days told, yes, it looks like there's clear evidence there. We were told that there was signs of chlorine, which could be signs of a chlorine gas attack. And then within days, without congressional approval, without any sort of law or asking the people or anything like that, Donald Trump started bombing in Syria. They sent over 100 Tomahawk missiles in response to this alleged gas attack. So again, no congressional approval, no votes or anything, no asking the people, consent to the governed.
Yeah, he's not being impeached for that, though.
No, not that. Just worry about other things. But so that was last year, last April 2018. Why are we talking about this right now? Well, for one, at the time, myself and others did lots of investigating. There were some independent reporters who were on the ground, British reporters, American reporters, Syrian reporters, who were there, who were providing conflicting reports with what we were being told. So there was already some skepticism towards the situation over whether or not it was a reality that we should really buy into and believe into. Now we have, I would say, clear evidence of the fact that the OPCW, in at least this one case, lied about the chemical attack in Douma, Syria. Many of you probably changed your Facebook profiles to a Syrian flag, or said, yeah, this is the one time
I saw someone that did.
I support Trump, bombing because, well, that Assad, he's a butcher and he's a...
Nation's got to come together for some
Everybody's got to come together when it comes to bombing. And anybody who disagrees, well, they're just the Russian stooge or things of that sort. But now a whistleblower from the OPCW has come forward and leaked emails to WikiLeaks, as well as made public statements now, discussing how preliminary reports that indicated that there was no signs of a chlorine gas attack, or what they said specifically is that the chlorine atom that was present can be found in everything from household bleach as well as chlorine gas. But they made no distinction, and one of the investigators tried to say, hey, I think this is pretty broad. And long story short, by the end of the final report that the public saw, all of that had been scrubbed, it had been changed, and these internal emails, which are now public, make it clear that some of the investigators that were part of the team were saying, like, hey, what's going on? How come the final draft report looks so much different? The final report looks so much different from the preliminary draft reports we were doing. You could say, well, they got better evidence by the end, and they put out, the final conclusive report. But at the end of the day, it very much seems, and the evidence seems to indicate that people within the OPCW changed their reports so that it could benefit the Americans and the Western governments and give them an excuse to bomb Syria. We know that General Wesley Clark, in the days after 9/11, he told Amy Goodman of Democracy Now! They had a plan after 9/11 to go into 7 different countries: Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, and I'm missing one, but I know the final
Korea.
2 were Syria and Iran. And this
Korea.
Korea's on the list. So, we know that they have had this plan, they being the military and the people in the military. This is coming from, again, General Wesley Clark telling this to Amy Goodman in, I think, 2005 or so. And Syria has been marked for quite some time. So I just want that to be clear, because go look at CNN.com right now. Go look at TheHill.com. Go look at MSNBC. Go look up...
no, stop telling us what to do.
Any of those garbage sites you want, and you're not going to find a single mention of this story. I did see that one news outlet did report on it, but they basically said the OPCW stands by their story, and that this is based on preliminary reports, and it's not accurate or representative of what they really found. But at least 2 whistleblowers have come forward and said that their words have been changed, and that the OPCW is being used as a tool for Western interests. I will post the link to that whole thing, including all the several articles that discuss that, on the Freethinker Radio Facebook page right now for those who are interested.
Very nice. Very nice. I see we've got some keep calling in. We are giving the tickets away, 713-526-5738. And I see the WTO's in the news. It was in the news around this time back in 99, the Battle of Seattle. They say people's world was exploding inside with uprisings. Over 170,000 Lebanese people linked hands for miles during massive weeks-long protests during 99. People in Hong Kong have been demonstrating for months. People in Ecuador, Chile, Iraq, and Haiti are taking to the streets with outrage about price hikes, state violence, unemployment, and cuts to basic services. Senegalese young people removed a president in 2012 and refused to become a political party. Their movement has built deep connections with Congolese young people who are risking their lives and freedom to build movement. Infrastructure amidst violence and crisis cannot even begin to imagine. People's movements are demanding complete overhauls of political and economic systems and are facing severe and often deadly retaliation. So, hey, do we have a call? What's going on, Derek?
No, there's no call. That was MOD. He was reminding us, and I know we mentioned this on Monday, but that just to make a mention that the Patriot Act was approved and extended again just recently. And as we were saying, that the only time the two parties, which are so different, according to some people, they're so different and so opposite, that the only time they come together is to celebrate and champion war, or to come together to extend surveillance programs that take away your basic privacies.
Yeah, or get you hooked up on something that you can pay for.
Yeah, I got one more I want to mention. I saw you pull it up a moment ago. This Border Patrol agent revealing the targeting of journalists at the border. This actually happened a few months ago. NBC San Diego did a good report.
Because that wall's there to keep you in.
But now the employee, who's a 34-year-old Border Patrol employee, says that he joined up because he wanted to do all the good and just help out the country and help keep things secure. He doesn't seem to be doing this for some sort of political agenda. He just says that at some point in his work, he came across some non-classified PowerPoints that were accessible to anybody in his position. And when he did that, he realized that there was clear evidence that the Border Patrol has been targeting journalists, lawyers, activists, and just professionals who were either following or reporting or offering their legal services to that migrant caravan. You remember that was going on earlier in the year, last year. So apparently when that was going on, the Border Patrol identified people online who had posted about, hey, I'm going to go help out. You know, maybe it's medical help, right? Or I'm going to offer legal services, or I'm going to report as a journalist. And each of these people, every time they tried to cross back into the United States, they were assigned an additional screening. They were, they were asked to give more details. And essentially it seems like the cops were trying to turn them into informants. And so this officer, this Border Patrol agent, now former Border Patrol agent because he was let go pretty quickly, has come forward and made himself known publicly and says, like, this is something people need to be paying attention to and probably be more aware of and worried about because it's going on all around us. And again, I agree with Micah's sentiment that the border is to keep you in. This is one other area where I personally am not just what is termed open borders, just let everybody in sort of situation. But I also can think and see that there is a game being played. And in the years after 9/11 and up till today, we were told that terrorism was around every corner and that this is the reason we need to let them search us at the airports, or we need to let them have the Patriot Act, or we need to do all these different things. And now that has sort of in the Trump era has morphed into the immigrants, the immigrants and the illegal immigrants and the immigration, not to say that's not an important issue that needs to have a nuanced discussion. But that is that fear that some of you have and some in the audience may have.
Or let's just say that fear is always being cultivated.
Fear is cultivated. It's cultivated and it's manipulated. It's like, they give you the fear and then once you respond to it, problem, reaction, solution, they push you, hey, well, look, the answer is let's build a wall. And whether or not this physical wall ever gets built, what people need to understand is that we're already seeing an increase in automatic license plate cameras all along the border, which can see, they gather thousands of license plate every minute, and they store those in a national database. We're seeing the installation of facial recognition cameras along the border. We're seeing the militarization and things like this, where journalists, people doing their jobs, and people who are just traveling are literally being set aside for extra screening, extra harassment by the current border patrol.
Sometimes they were being denied access to Mexico. So, like I said, they weren't being allowed to leave. And these were law-abiding citizens being kept within the walls.
So you don't have to be left, right, conservative, liberal to sit here and be, okay, maybe that's not headed in a good direction. Maybe we should slow that down, rethink that policy, etc. It doesn't have to always get put in this partisan box that we divide and fight over and argue over. This is a real problem that the immigration issue is being used as a way to manipulate your thinking and get you to submit to the militarization of the border, to submit to even more surveillance and even more tracking. And so if they don't get you afraid of the terrorists to give up your rights, then they're going to get you afraid of the immigrants or the communists or, the other. It's all about that other. Be afraid.
Yeah. So it seems. Oh, goodness.
What you got next? I see you over there with some important things.
I was looking at all kinds of different things. One thing that we've covered before, is when the U.S. arrests or ICE arrests these people with fake universities.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Another one. It's just
like, isn't this like just the worst message to be sending out to the world? I get it. I was kind of happy because of these 250 poor people that were arrested. One of them actually got granted immigration status by a judge. He probably wouldn't even try to come here except he thought he was going to a university or whatever, because that's what they do. They go over there, oh, you want to go to university? Here,
So I know that we don't have a moment or so, but why is this story just popping up again? Because I just did a search, and I wrote about this back in April, and The Guardian first reported about this, that ICE was creating fake social media accounts connected to a fake university created to identify illegal immigrants. Is this another one, or is this this school was called
Farmington University.
Let me see if that's the same one. Farmington, yeah, University of Farmington, yeah, that's the same. So I wonder why it's popping back up again.
Maybe they just use it again in 2 years, and a whole other crop of freshmen graduate.
I mean, because honestly, and just for those who are like, oh, that darn Trump, this started in 2015.
Yeah.
Undercover agents built the Michigan school's facade with a fake website, government documents that confirmed it was eligible to enroll foreign students, and fake Facebook accounts, including supposed staff members. In a January indictment, the government accused students of enrolling in the school to stay in the country illegally, knowing that the institution was a sham. That's how they do you.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, though. I'm trying to get into this story just a little bit. I know my computer's acting a little bit crazy. So it says that ICE arrests 90 or more foreign students at fake university created by DHS in Michigan. So, I mean, that's their approach, right? Let's create something fake and entice people into it. About 250 students have been arrested since January on immigration violations by ICE as part of a sting. And they were basically enticing foreign-born students, mostly of India, to attend a school that marketed itself as offering graduate programs in technology and computer studies. Most of those arrested have been deported. Others are contesting their removals. One has been allowed to stay, yes, after being granted lawful permanent resident status by an immigrant judge. I'm just getting annoyed with my computer fading away on me. There was an interesting aspect here that it said something about the recruiters, and I think maybe that's part of the news on this, is that the recruiters in this are coming under more and more scrutiny, and we'll see what's going on with that. But it's been a great episode. We only have a few moments left, and we do still have some tickets available. We'll try to find a way to get these out to people. I know all our callers were more interested in the dialogue than the tickets, and so, yeah, good stuff, right? It's good when they're more interested in what we have to talk about than free stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but don't miss out on the free stuff. You definitely want your free stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, we have covered a lot today. We've talked about the Syrian OPCW whistleblower. Mike talked about WTO. We talked about, the fire here going on locally in Houston. We talked about the Tuttle raid. We talked about the medical situation, whether the state should have a right to tell you that, your life is over, or that you can't accept service.
Guns.
Talking about the government creating fake universities. One last thing I want to mention.
Talked about Teacher of the Year.
Teacher of the Year. One last thing I want to mention while we wind down, it's been 3 years since the situation, what some refer to as the battle at Standing Rock. I was there 3 times, August 2016, October, and then December. And, just sort of thinking back on the legacy of that, for those who may remember, of course, Dakota Access Pipeline, built by a company based here in Houston and in Dallas, up in North Dakota.
Isn't that leaking?
And it has leaked a couple times since it was put into operational status. For those who aren't aware, the camps were infiltrated by private intelligence, former military agency known as Tiger Swan that was hired by the local police.
Isn't that standard operation?
To infiltrate the activist camp. Yeah, pretty much going on since COINTELPRO in the 60s and 70s.
Just letting them know that's who's doing it now.
I was personally witness to the police leaving a vehicle on one of the bridges and watching these alleged protesters. They seem more like provocateurs come in and set a vehicle on fire, and then the next day watch the news report, the protesters lit things on fire. I mean, I was able to document that with my camera and saw this beautiful situation where lots of people, indigenous people from around the world came out, all the way from Norway and from New Zealand, to support and to offer their messages, and it was very quickly infiltrated, unfortunately, and the media didn't show up till the last moments when it was kind of crumbling underneath that infiltration. And then when the cops kicked everybody out, what did the people report? Oh, look at all this trash the protesters left, That's the way they try to treat movements.
And wasn't the trash that burning vehicle that the police had put there?
Well, the burning vehicles, as well as, literal things that were left behind.
Yeah.
But in the end, they pushed everybody out ASAP, so you didn't have time to clean up.
Well, I think, yeah, that's true.
If
you don't have
out
time,
or you're
then
getting arrested,
Yeah. For sure.
But we're going to close out. You got some music for us, Micah?
I think we're done. We're done.
Okay, cool. Well,
Yeah.
no music then. But we got plenty of music
remind people
coming up next.
We do have plenty of music coming up next. A lot of new stuff coming up in the. I do notice that a lot of people are still in debt for the last holiday season. There was a whole article about that. Y'all don't do that this year.
Don't put yourself in debt for Black Friday.
Maybe we'll get into it a little bit more on the HD side on Monday. There's some tips we've got. We'd like you to call in on HD on Monday. We're there for 2 hours. We're going to play lots of music, talk about a lot of different events. Like I said, December 5th up at 19th Hole, Ganesha hosting a special music event there. And until then, y'all have a good time. I'll see y'all Monday. Got anything to leave them with?
No, just enjoy yourself. Be safe this weekend. Enjoy the tunes coming up. Thank you to everybody at KPFT. Again, this has been Freethinker Radio. We'll see you next Monday. Peace.
Bad facts.